Abusuani kuma o channel so high Gauge Protect Avenue. Podcast also trending make we speaking headlines. And your Jimre na be exumo. Na ene lawyer Attachia ene Kwabena Boahen ekupi mu ewo eye court. Na emu sensem ne Jimre be exumo. No lawyer na Jimre ekasai. Echre se eye sika omu ede ato eye Kwabena Boahen. So eye 491 million Ghana cedi. Omu se o transfer ye ekugu account bi no. Ebi mu no osis kan transfer ne de so ampa ebi mpo ekọ Israel na ga mu ede kwakoto cyber security software bi na ye ka transfer ono ko antimi ye transfer. There's a whole lot of hansa ewom ewo transfer ni ma owura no ademra o kasa challenge prosecution case na onua ehun ebehia say edb exumo mr wo say ye monwura sim abra ene omokopi court
Boahen afesi cafe state BNC no e de akogu ni private account no aba clear e ma ono akromo na age atum say national security coordinator and sign check no Kwabena Boahen ye co-signatory Kwabena Boahen ntumi use ono nko signature and transfer any money anywhere account na sikano ko tomu no national security coordinator and special operations account edu ba bi kwa no na sikano ese fi ba bi e kotoy no esam back to her 7.2 million Ghana cedis e ba ho waje atum enti so oba kofo entumi and transfer sikana ade na beka so wa wie sikano te asama da no afi kwa identity na sikano kwa no or move from friends Fidelity Bank to UMB Bank. If we say now own here forex, and now Fidelity Bank say own to me ma on your no. No say on firm my then you because UMB to start open account say and call. And now UMB boa. I feel who say Fidelity who so lose scan. No say upfront so I feel my better race. And now 7.2 million as I'm bar account from coordinator account where UMB no enti okronfo be no we sika we not be siam abechew enti comedy ne there cantanta ne there yeguso
Jewaka city say sika no wo hefa
national security apply sika no senior esoye ebi ko Israel on waje atum
to arrest Hanan. I think for me that's the issue. The reasons about what's called whether some accounts were frozen or they were not frozen is for me it's neither here nor there, because I think there are also the case you mentioned is just one case, but there are also authorities that suggest that the fact that an action has been seized, yes, that does not vacate an order of the court, a freezing order of the court. The circumstances will always what's called dictate that and the terms of the order itself. You understand? But having said that, my personal view is that where an order of the court still exists, where that order has not been vacated, you understand? Where no step has been taken to procure an order that will stay execution of that order, where that order has not been varied, then also based on the principle that justice must not only be done, it must manifestly be seen to be done. I feel that it was wrong for the AG to have taken a step Eddie took, because like I'm saying right now, because of the extent to which the MPP has sunk low, it's so easy to support any bid to hang them. But part of the reset agenda also includes a renewal of our commitment to our constitution. I think is a huge part of it. Because I've said here on so many times that I believe that the MPP in the past were a threat to the rule of law. Understand? Now, because of all that, I think the easiest thing for you to do right now is to sidestep the call for us to be faithful to our constitution in attack of anybody of the MPP stock. But like I'm saying, our focus always must be to stay faithful to our constitution, irrespective of who is at the end of it. Because clearly, like I'm saying, does the executive have the power? Does the executive have the power to truncate a clear order of the judiciary where steps have not been taken, like I said, to either vacate, to vary, or to stay execution? And the answer ought to be no. Ought to be no because of our general good. Understand? So for me, I see this issue more of a constitutional one, more of a call for us to show fidelity to our constitution, irrespective of who. Because I understand they are going to court today. But as it stands, that order of the court still exists. There's still an order of the court. An order of the court that says that Hanan's passport should be released to him. Yeah. An order from the court that says that Hanan should be allowed to travel. I do not know. Maybe if there is, I'm sure Hamza will bring all those issues up. If there's a stay of execution, I do not know. I do not know if there's been a variation of I don't know. I don't know if there is an injunction. There is an injunction application, because you know that a notice of an injunction is as good as an injunction. So I do not know of all the steps that the AG may have taken or can take to more or less freeze or arrest this order. I do not know. But if they are, I'm sure quickly it should be communicated to us, because that impression that this executive is more or less truncating the clear powers of the judiciary does not augur well for our republic, for this democracy, and for our constitution. Because, like I said, this reset agenda must include a renewal of our commitment to our constitution. Because over the period between 2017 and 2024, a lot was done that represented driving of a dagger into the heart of our constitution. Understand? And you recall that one of the issues that we fought why we needed a reset was because of the extent to which belief or trust in our political system or in our political institution was failing because of the very terrible governance granted us during the period between 2017 and 2024. And so for me, we cannot be seen to be following that trajectory. Yeah. We need to be committed to our constitution, because that's the only way in which the purpose for this constitution can be met. And it shouldn't matter whether the person at the receiving end is Timawun to me. It shouldn't matter whether it is what's his name, Hanan. It shouldn't matter even if it's Ken Ufuyata. At all time, our loyalty must always and only be to the constitution of this country. So
that means the constitutional rights of the person has to also be respected. In this case, you don't think that it was respected?
Because, you see, one of the critical oaths that the president took, and for me, that also represents his term of reference for his job, was an oath to be faithful to Ghana, to be faithful to the values and ideals of Ghana. It was an oath to be faithful, to uphold, defend, protect the constitution of Ghana, to dedicate himself to the well-being of all Ghanaians. And for me, that call must always be respected, irrespective of who is at the receiving end.
All right. Alhaji, so if per what the Deputy Attorney General said, the attempt to withdraw from the account happened on Thursday, and the arrest was made on Saturday, just like Council is saying, between that Thursday and Saturday, do you have any idea when the alert was given to the Office of the Attorney General, the BNI, of this attempted withdrawal? And if that's the case, did they try or attempt to go to court for a stay of injunction or anything to allow them arrest Hanan at the airport?
Bella, I think that, first of all, let me make the point that Hanan is a brother. Yeah. But beyond that, I think that he would agree with me, even if he was on this platform, that when it comes to our commitment to serving this country, it goes beyond blood bonds. Yeah. And that the most important thing is how we can all contribute meaningfully to ensuring that we meet the expectations of the Ghanaian people. And especially when it comes to the fight against corruption, familial bonds should not be a hindrance as far as that commitment is concerned. And so making that point, permit me to attempt to answer the concern that you raised. And I think that my brother also raised those concerns. First of all, it is important to state that indeed the Attorney General, Deputy AG, indicated that attempts were made to access their accounts on Thursday. But he fell short of telling us when that information came to the government. It could have been that Thursday, and maybe attempts to locate him was not feasible. And they knew that he would be traveling, and so decided to trail him until that point. This is feasible. When it comes to exercising the power of arrest, you do not determine the most, what do you think to be the ideal form of carrying out that arrest, especially if the arrest is carried within the remit of the law. So as to whether the information got to the AG on Thursday, Friday or Saturday, they determine the most feasible way to effect that arrest. And the law does not frown upon such a strategy on the part of the AG. That's one. Secondly, I disagree with your commentators who argue that maybe this decision was taken because of the Ken Ofori-Atta experience. I'm pretty much convinced that these were arguments that the Attorney General would have advanced when the application was made seeking leave to travel. And to the extent that the court proceeded to grant that leave, it simply means that these arguments were not considered strong enough, even on the part of the judge. And so that commitment to our constitutional principles can still be deduced as far as the decision of that judge is concerned in granting Hanan Aludiba the leave to travel. So I think that that point needs to be made. That to the extent that the leave was granted, it meant that regardless of these fears that people had, the judge did not find merit that this was likely to happen in the case of Hanan Aludiba. My brother also proceeded in calling on His Excellency President Mahama to actually demonstrate commitment to the resetting agenda. And of course, they are at AG. I think that we have shown ample commitment to that. And I can forgive the misinterpretation placed on the recent arrest on Hanan. And maybe a further explanation would let you appreciate, Senior Counsel, that indeed this is not out of the law. There's the need for us to attempt a distinction between the court granting Mr. Hanan Aludiba permission to travel and a purported new crime committed under the law. For example, maybe putting in an example will bring clarity to it. If a court grants my brother Fifi permission to travel, and before the effective travel date, Fifi commits an offense, it does not mean that the state hands are tied in exercising their power of arrest simply because an earlier court had granted permission for him to travel.
Okay.
Are you getting the distinction here?
I'm listening.
Because, you see, Bella, they appeared before a judge. He sought for permission to travel. The judge said, okay, you are allowed to travel. Now we are being told by the Attorney General that even after the grant of that permission to travel, Mr. Hanan committed an independent crime, different from the application he sought to travel. And simply because the judge granted him leave to travel does not mean that the state cannot use that power of arrest to arrest Mr. Hanan at the airport. These are two different things. Two different things. Otherwise, the precedents we are setting in this country would be that each time you are granted leave to travel, God forbid, you can even commit murder. And because the court has granted you leave to travel, nobody would dare stop you at the airport.
But if, you know, the leave has been granted, and of course, this is still related to his case, which is in court, shouldn't the Attorney General's office now go back to the High Court, the same High Court that granted the leave of permission to leave?
The move applications for grant of leave, when they are granted, and you proceed to engage, even before it is carried out, and you proceed to engage in acts that are tantamount to a breach of the law of this country, it triggers the power of state institutions, having the power of arrest, to arrest independent of that grant of leave, even though it may be connected to the case in hand before the courts. But that cannot be misinterpreted to mean a vacation of the order of the court.
But that puts more power in the state, in the hands of the state than the judiciary that granted that leave.
No, the state has always had that power. And Bella, the point I'm making is that the fact that Hanan was granted permission to travel does not mean that if he commits a crime, for example, he slaps somebody at the airport, assault, who accuses him of embezzling state funds, it doesn't mean that the state cannot arrest Hanan there, simply because the court earlier on granted permission in relation to that same case for him to travel. When the state does that, it is not a vacation of the order of the court. That order still stands as we speak. If the Attorney General, upon investigations, realizes that there was no attempt to access that bank account, they release him, he travels. He's allowed to travel. But
in this case, he would have missed his appointment. And you see, that's why his lawyer is asking for evidence. Because if we're saying that there is some illegality that has been perpetrated at this point, is there evidence to prove this point?
So that is an excellent observation. But you see, the most important thing is that you have to know that, look, the public opinion is not where you play the evidence card. The Attorney General, in line with his constitutional duty, decided to respect the good people of this country. And these were calls made by the MPP, if you remember, when this government assumed office and the state institutions started carrying out arrests. Yeah. They reissued an official statement and demanded that reasons ought to be given behind the arrest of certain former officials. And in line with our constitutional mandate, the Attorney General has been quite consistent. Anytime anybody is picked up, reasons are given. He has given reasons that, look, this is the reason why Mr. Hanan has been picked up. But when it comes to the adducing of evidence, that evidence is not to be adduced publicly. We are not to determine the veracity or otherwise of evidence that the Attorney General would submit before the law courts. It is the law courts that will do so. And the former AG ought to know that if he needs evidence of the allegations being thrown against Mr. Hanan Alodiba, it is not the granting of interview that will give him that evidence. Today, when they appear in court, the Attorney General office would present the evidence in court, and he is allowed to contest that evidence.
You're saying he will present?
Yes.
So does it mean you are aware that there's some evidence?
Absolutely.
Okay, you are.
Absolutely,
okay.
There is evidence to the effect that there was an attempt to access the accounts. But as to whether or not the court would determine that these evidence are indeed strong or weightier enough to even warrant a review of the earlier grant of permission to travel, that is solely a decision for the court to take. And that point needs to be made. Bella, you see, when I listened to the former AG, I was worried, and that is that if Anan is listening, or any of his family members are listening, even the choice of the girlfriend, Adami.
We in some of the team calls or channel, so I'm not so dim. Read as soon as what India don't be a domain. Give us some.